we talked about a little bit about the internal and internal mechanics and things like that. And this next question kind of depends on what your definitions are, but how important is the concept of chi to Tai Chi? Ronnie, would you like to speak on that?
Sure, of course, this term gets thrown out as a blanket term for internal power and so forth, but that's very subjective, right? We all know this. And someone says you have chi and you can feel the warmth in your hand. That's just, we can say that's just blood going to the fingertips, or you feel great when you practice and you feel chi or this lightness about you. My take on it is, of course, we all know the six harmonies, the three internal harmonies, the intent, spirit, and chi. I say chi is, my take on it is, it's the it's a life force. It's everything that gives everything life in our universe. It's how we're alive, how something is dead, but it has chi. There's life in it. You can see when someone walks into a room, you can feel there's more life, and there's negative chi, and so forth, right? Chi always exists, but we're hindering it. As soon as let's say a baby is born, you can say, oh, it's full of chi. It's vibrant, it's fresh, and right. There's no tightness in the body, we'll say. As we get older, there's all this tightness. We try to do a system of martial arts. We try to bring out chi. And so it kind of actually blocks it, I feel. So as we train in our systems, right, whatever system it is, we're actually subtracting. We're going back to the beginning, but with a mind intent skill, right? Because a baby can't do that. It doesn't because it doesn't have the thinking part yet. So as we get into our martial art, chi exists. How can we harness it? How can we subtract so we come back to the original form of it? So with spirit and mind intent, this is my take on it again. It's intent first. So I'm doing form, I'm doing motion. I have this intent to do an application or body mechanic. Then as you get better at it, it becomes automatic. You say that person has spirit when they're doing it, right? It looks amazing. How are they moving like that? And there's power, and they can apply it so well without any emotion. Then I would say chi is the last thing, because once the intention is there, the spirit is there, you can say, I can just move transcendently. It's just I have chi. It's like you can compare it to someone who's great at music, singing. When they're that level, that looks like there's so much high spirit there. That's chi flowing through without any hindrance.
Chris, thought on that? Importance of chi?
Okay, now we're getting into topics that we can start to argue about for real.
Great.
You know, this is absolutely a core question. And the way I like to dodge this question is just by talking about how the early generation Taiji masters looked at Qi. And so I start off by sharing references to the literature, and I think I'll share two of those now. Firstly, starting from Zheng Manqing, who was one of the most who was and is one of the most influential Taiji writers in history. And if you look at his book, which he ghost wrote for Yang Chengfu, he says something that is received as quite paradoxical. He says, when I met Yang Chengfu, I finally learned the importance of not using qi. Not using qi. And people read this and they say, well, it's got to be a misprint. It's got to be a typo. He didn't know what he was talking about, or let's just ignore it. But this is what he said in black and white. And if we look more broadly at the literature that was generated in the early 20th century, when Tai Chi was really starting to go public, and early generation masters were looking to impart at least some of their wisdom onto their future students. You can look at the topics that they considered to be important, because again, it's written right down in the manuals. And fortunately, with the internet these days, we've got many, if not most of those manuals now available to us in English. So we have no excuse not to look it up. And when we look at those manuals, we see pages and pages and pages talking about how to locate your arms and your legs and your trunk and how to move them from one position to the next. And we see actually very little discussion of Qi. It's almost the polar opposite of what modern students would like Tai Chi to be.
Now, that's a good point. And Ken, you particularly have a very scientific outlook on life. What's your take on this? Is Qi, or is the maybe the question is that what the public thinks of Qi is that important to Tai Chi? I don't know. Let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think what the public thinks of Qi is not that different from Tai Chi.
Yeah.
They think of the metaphysical, near supernatural things and kind of separate from reality a little bit. I think you can talk about Qi in so many different ways from a cultural perspective. In China, it's just there.
Yeah.
And it can mean breath, it can mean the flow of life through your body. I talked with two men who have spent decades going to Taiwan, and Bill, you've talked to them too, I believe, Tim Cartmel and Dan Miller. And Tim Cartmel says Qi never comes up in his classes. It's body mechanics, and it never comes up in the classes you take in Taiwan or China when they are good fighters,
Right.
when they use it as martial art. So, I mean, I do sometimes when I get a new student in and they ask about it, I say, okay, let me demonstrate Qi flow. And I get in a good structure, I have them push on me and I ground it. I say, let me show you no Qi flow. And I collapse my arm and they take me pretty easily. See, there's a difference. There you've got structure. You're using the internal mechanics and line up, and here you're not using any of that intent. So
Yeah, I agree.
look at it more realistically.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I mean, Ken Fish, I was talking to him once, and he said that when he was growing up in Taiwan, he said martial arts were like baseball was in the United States in the same time period. Nobody was talking about Qi. You did these movements and things worked. But of course, like what I think what Ronnie was saying too is that a lot of this, like when we talk about Qi as spirit or like passion or intensity or something like that, it's like the difference between a guitar player who's technically proficient, but it's just very cold and unenjoyable to listen to, as opposed to somebody that's like really putting their intent and their spirit into it. So I guess it really just depends on the definition. And of course, Qi, like you said, Ken's got a lot of definitions culturally.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of leads nicely into my next question. Here we can get into some darker waters. When we talk about things like Qi and sometimes people from outside the martial arts world